Come.
Hey guys, welcome to the Omniverse of Nick and the next Scream Tale, 2 parts. What if Randy Meeks survived? Before we get started, be sure to check out the Omniverse's homepage, where channel mascot Omni will direct you to the Discord, both Google Docs, and everything else the Omniverse has to offer, along with smashing the like button, subscribing to the Omniverse of Nick, sharing the Omniverse around, and turning on all Omniverse notifications, and commenting future requests and expectations in the comment section. With all that said, let's begin. So, this is the next Scream Tale, which is going to be 2 parts. What if Randy Meeks survived and did not die in Scream 2? So, even though I've touched upon this idea before, I've never touched upon Randy Meeks directly. So, let's touch upon him here. He was introduced to us in Scream 1, and it was a core-defining character in the entirety of the idea of surviving in a horror movie with rules and just... He was a character that was desperately needed and appreciated, especially in the time that he was. But in Scream 2, he would meet a very brutal fate at the hands of Mrs. Loomis, Billy Loomis's mother, after taunting her about Billy. And it did not end well for him at all. He was brought back in at Scream 3, supposedly dying because virginity loss and rules. And whether you want to take that as a logical point or not, it was a very much regrettable decision to kill him off in the first place. But they closed his character seemingly off by bringing him from a videotape, a past version of himself, and going on to pull on a living legacy for himself and to help Sydney and everybody for Scream 3 and just onward. And it was only because of his sister Martha Meeks that we even got that in the first place. And after Scream 3, Scream 4 only having a small Charlie Robbie moment, it was like years and years and years down the line, it's like this seemingly shut the door on Randy forever. But Scream 5 and 6 would change that forever. Martha Meeks would return with children, Chad and Mindy Meeks. And Mindy took on her uncle's persona to freaking heart. Like, I'm saying, you might as well have just kept Randy in, because she full-on embodiment of Randy Meeks, and Chad was not. He only just appreciated and loved his uncle. Mindy took everything that like Randy was and just full on, and it fully put back in the entirety of the idea of Randy Meeks and just made him presentable and like shown that it was regretted that he died, like full completely. So that begs the question, what if Randy Meeks did not die in Scream 2 and actually became a core character? That's what we touch upon today. It'll be 2 parts, so let's get into it. We open up at Scream 2, and it all goes the same, up until Randy gets the call. And while everyone's looking for Ghostface, Randy is on the phone, and it goes the same. But then Randy, I'm going to say that he still goes and taunts Ghostface just because. And either he would know that the van is just too suspicious to be this close by while he's on the phone and literally talking up and cussing up a storm Ghostface, or Ghostface would try to attack Randy just in general in the van or outside the van, and everybody would come to his rescue before Ghostface can actually do anything, and then Ghostface runs off. Because I'm not going to say that Ghostface would just know how smart Randy's being and just run off, or just stay in the van, because Mrs. Loomis crazy. So I'm going to say that it's either in the van or outside of it that she tries to attack, and then she runs off as Randy's getting saved. Either way, Randy Meeks survives. So now everybody has to discuss what to do from here. And also, Joel, this is the first time that this is going to happen. Joel is not going to quit, and he's actually going to remain with our cast. And Joel knows, because the entire reason Joel left was because Randy died and it was too much for him. Joel says that even though it's this close for him to want to just skip town and leave because of this whole killing and Ghostface and all that stuff, he wants to stay to help Gale, so he'll stay. So yeah, then we get Gale and Dewey, and Joel and Randy are with them in the school and just doing all of the research to try to find out about Ghostface and everything. And it'd be debatable if they tried to make out in the school and did that because Joel and Randy are there, but that's just a small, like, whatever. If you really want to visualize that, creeps. But anyways, then we get to the whole scene with them in the room and behind the wall mirror thing. But here's where something really takes, like, full-on notice here. Joel leaving in the original timeline was probably the smartest decision of his life. But staying in this story isn't. Not at all. Because instead of Dewey getting stabbed in the back a second time, Joel takes the stabs, and dies. So Joel ain't pulling a Dewey here and living. No, him leaving was the smartest thing he ever did. And his death here, instead of Dewey stabbing, just goes to show him staying was dumbest decision ever. And Joel dies. But Gale, Randy, and Dewey, after this, get the jump on Ghostface, and it's revealed to be Mickey. Now, Randy pretty much already had an idea and knew this, but Gale is surprised, and it still does surprise Randy a little bit. And Dewey gets his gun and demands to know who the other Ghostface is. Mickey says, "You really don't know? And you guys think you were so smart and on point. Heck, Randy was even able to guess me. But I suspect that my partner in crime, speaking of which, is having their own fun with Sydney right now." And the guard and the other, both the security guards and the whole thing with Sydney and her friend Natty in the car, that all goes the same. And Sydney's friend Natty, or whatever the frick her name was, she dies. Not really an important character, so I'm not going to go fully in depth with her. And then Sydney finds Derek all strung up and everything like before, and Ghostface confronts her. But like Mrs. Loomis did with Gale at that door, it gets role reversed in this story. Mickey is pushed out of the door right where Mrs. Loomis pushed Gale out of in the original, and Randy, Dewey, and Gale step out of it and tell Sydney everything, and now Sydney wants to know who this ghost face is. And Mrs. Loomis reveals herself. And Mickey's like Billy's mother and goes on about the whole trial thing, and then he gets brutally murdered. And Mrs. Loomis then just reveals her whole plan and just goes on the whole spiel. And she says whether she is outnumbered or not, Sydney killed her son. Now she kills her and she can't think of anything more rational. Then she goes on her whole plan about Mickey and how she was going to kill Randy. But because of a few minor little problems here and there and some stupid things that got in the way, she wasn't able to get Randy for talking about her son the way that he did. But now she's going to get all of them. And she doesn't care who she has to go through to get Sydney, but she will get Sydney. And then Randy and anyone else who steps in her way. And she says to all of them, none of them know what it is to be a mother. And she goes on her whole tirade and, and then Cotton Weary comes in, and I don't even have to tell you guys, with Cotton Weary and just, the odds are not in Mrs. Lewis's favor. And she dies. I don't even have to tell you guys, Mrs. Loomis is screwed here. So yeah. And then Mickey tries to come back and it's like, whatever. So if anything, Scream 2 it went like millions of times easier. And this is where we end the opening with Joel staying and then dying, proving to be the dumbest decision of his life, and Randy Meeks, our lead character, surviving. And Dewey not getting stabbed twice in the back means he is more durable and active for what will be the next and final part and the wrap up to this whole arc here for Randy Meeks as we get into Scream 3 and next time's final and next part for Randy Meeks' survival.
Now get out!
What?
Get out! Everybody get out!
Welcome!
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Omniverse of Nick and the second and final part to What If Randy Meeks Survived. Before we get started, be sure to check out the Omniverse's homepage, where our channel mascot Omni will direct you to the Discord, both Google Docs, and everything else the Omniverse has to offer, along with smashing the like button, subscribing to the Omniverse of Nick, sharing the Omniverse around and turning on all Omniverse notifications, and commenting future requests and expectations in the comments section. With all that said, let's begin. So, the second and final part, we're opening with Scream 3 to Randy Meeks' survival. Now, we start off with everything going immensely the same. Cotton Weary dies. Gail shows up, sees Dewey on the set of the Stab movies, and Jennifer and the fake Gail, and that all goes the same. And then Stone, the bodyguard, gets killed, and more of the movie starts lining up the same way. The entire house blows up when they're trying to figure out the message behind the killings. And yeah, then Sidney Prescott gets pulled into the situation, and soon enough, she is involved with, figuring out about her mom, and this is very deeply connected to her. And Gail and Jennifer, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then at the scene where we would get introduced to Randy on the videotape, he is introduced with his sister Martha, both just, living and just hearing about everything that's happened. Randy wanting to spend more time with family after Scream 2, considering what had happened, even though it was nowhere near as deep as, in canon. But Randy still gives the exact same speech to Sidney, although I doubt there would be the whole, rules thing be deeply affected to him. That part would probably just be taken out. But he overall, the entire conversation would be the same, except it would be Randy saying it in terms of him actually being alive. So, kind of different. And Randy also says that in order to make sure that this gets done, he's coming with her. And Sidney is like, what? You've almost died twice. You don't need to do this, Randy. This is about me. And Randy says, yeah, he gets that. It's always been about Sidney. But it's also affected him too. And it's now at risk of affecting his sister and his family. So he is going to do everything in his power to make sure Sidney gets through this, making sure the rules keep her alive, even if his life is once again at risk, because it always is. And he says, no matter what, whether he comes or goes, he knows his life will never be the same as long as a ghost face is donning a mask and killing people. So he is doing this for his own accord, his sister's, and to make sure Sidney goes on. And he tells Martha to remain in hiding so she does not get drawn in to what's about to happen. And Martha tells her brother to be dead careful, and they say goodbye and go on to figure out where to go from here. And yeah, she says more of how she loves him and how she should be coming along because of Randy sticking so much time after the events of Mrs. Loomis and everything, how it affects her a lot too. But Randy says she would just be another casualty, And if he is doomed to die at some point, he doesn't know. He's doing this because he just deeply cares about Sydney, and he doesn't want Martha to die on account of a choice he's making. So Martha is forced to stay in hiding. So they go to the mansion, and where the whole party thing Roman was setting up and everything. And Angelina dies, and Tyler dies, and then Jennifer dies. But Randy being there does mean that Jennifer almost survives, and the two of them get into a fight. But overall, Sydney comes to the rescue of Dewey, Gale, and Randy. And then Mark Kincaid walks in, and Mark Kincaid and Randy both together try to fight Ghostface. And then Sydney, Gale, and Dewey, seeing as the two of them are getting kind of, not so much obviously outnumbered because they outnumber Ghostface, but they're starting to lose because this Ghostface is determined. They all, just like Mrs. Loomis and Mickey, just get the jump on Ghostface. And it's revealed to be Roman, who reveals the entire backstory and then gets them all on hold whenever he gets the director in a hold and still explains his plan, still slits his throat anyway, but then he realizes he just made the biggest mistake of his life, not hiding or doing anything like that and letting them get the jump on him because he is completely outnumbered and just outmaneuvered and dropped and stabbed and shot to death on the ground. He comes back though, superhuman Roman, and is shot to the head and personally put down. So, once again, Randy walks out of the movie living. And we open with Scream 4, and there's not much that I'm really going to point out about Scream 4. But that scene where I talked about Charlie and Robbie having that Randy moment, because there was never a moment put in. I've included this before in a story, or more than one. Randy is actually going to be involved heavily in this scene with Charlie and Robbie talking about horror and having the class and everything like that. And talking about the rules of a fourth horror movie, which would be definitely way more put in because of Randy's involvement. So that'd be a definitely good moment. And the two actually become friends. But when it's revealed Charlie is the killer, that kind of hurts. And then Jill Roberts and Charlie are the two that are actually, like, in the end, the bad guys and going to do their whole plan when Randy, for the first time, gets a Ghostface blade and he is personally going for a kill. This would be a first for Randy if you truly think about it. Yes, he's helped with everybody else, with Mrs. Loomis, Mickey, and, like, Roman and everything, but he's never gotten the full kill himself, ever. So he would go and he would personally take out Charlie, ironically, when Jill was about to. This distracts Jill to the point Sydney is able to get the jump on Jill, and whenever she tries to, either it would take a battle that Sydney would eventually overcome over Jill to get her fatally stabbed, and then she would jump back up for a kill just like in canon, or Sydney would just be able to get Jill off guard, get a gun, and just take her out. Either way, Jill is taken out sooner and in a much different cohesive effort than before. So Sydney just drops down and has a moment with Jill just like canon. And Sydney and Randy together, because of everything in Scream 4 going exactly the same, are the twos left whenever Dewey and Gale eventually come and reunite with them and talk about everything that happened. So no hospital scene, and Scream 4 honestly ends much sooner. And as for Dewey and Gale, they are mostly, like I said, everything has gone the same with them. But aside from Dewey being far more active, he's not as injured. That extra stab that Joel took as a death, it means that Dewey is more active and has way more better health going for him. Then we get to Scream 5, and this is the game changer. Tara gets attacked in the home, and it all sets up the same. Samantha and Richie, they get dragged in, and that whole thing goes the same. Vince gets killed by Ghostface, and then we get the scene with Sam, Richie, Dewey, and everybody in Randy's home. But this, like I said, this is the game changer right here. We have Randy, we have Martha, we have Mindy, and we have Chad. We have on our hands here the entire Randy Meeks family all together. Think about how crazy that is. And together, Randy and Mindy cohesively combined talk about the rules for a fifth horror movie, which would be the greatest moment for Randy Meeks' family and his character because of how much Mindy defined Randy Meeks' character. The two of them together, oh, that's just pure cinema right there. And who knows, Chad and Martha would probably freaking jump in, especially with Randy being alive. So yeah, unfortunately though, Judy does still die, along with her son, Wes. And then we get Dewey and Gail getting back together, and then Dewey in the hospital to save Tara and help out Sam and everything like that, Richie faking and all that. But whenever Ghostface, Sam, or Amber, my bad, goes for the kill, Dewey is actually able to get more of a fight on hand because, like I said, he's more active and he has better health, but it's still not enough whenever Ghostface Amber is just, it's getting more and more brutal for Dewey. But Randy is there and just straight up drop kicks Ghostface, and then Ghostface just looks at both of them and just one more word says, "It's been an honor." And Ghostface just runs away, just thinking that Dewey's just going to die. And Dewey is in critical condition. But unlike before, he's actually alive. And Randy instantly gets on the phone with cops, paramedics, Gail, anybody, and says that they need to get here right now. And Dewey is taken into to the hospital, but technically they're already in a hospital, but now they're actually they're getting on full deck on board to try to save Dewey's life. But whenever Gail gets there and sees Dewey in critical condition, it's not too long after that Gail sees Dewey die slowly right before her very own eyes. So Dewey outlived his canon counterpart just by a little bit. So yeah. Then Sydney arrives, and her and Randy talk about everything that has happened about Dewey, and just overall have a much needed conversation after so many years. And then Randy, Sydney, and Gail together go to the house to confront Ghostface, Amber, and Richie for the finale. And Randy is shot instead of Gail and says, "Do this for Dewey." And Amber and Richie are revealed to be the Ghostfaces. Richie gets killed, Amber gets killed, and the rest of the movie just goes the same, except Gail is in much better condition, and it's done just a tiny little bit easier, especially with Randy. Then Scream 6. Randy and Mindy are key players in this movie and defining it. And since Sydney would not be in this movie, this is a full-on Randy Meeks family movie, along with the core four, Sam and Tara, and all that getting in. So whenever we get Richie's family, we get a full-on family battle. We basically get the Meeks family versus Richie's family. And Randy would finally die at the hands of their family. sacrificing himself for his family. And with this, Mindy and Chad, and along with all of the core four, go in together and finish this fight, and do it especially with Kirby also, maybe even Gale, for Randy. Not just for Dewey or Sydney, but for Randy. And Chad and Mindy, this death would hit them harder because they would actually see it before their very own eyes. And Randy's death would actually take meaning here as a sacrificial send-off for his family to let them live on and to actually make his character go out in a way that would make the original character and the very much regrettable decision to kill him off in the original seem like the dumbest choice the Scream franchise ever made. And for Scream 7's setup, Sydney and Gale, a true send-off to his character, just like Scream 3 did, would be in order for Sydney and Gale, and Sydney's story for Scream 7, and they would always remember Randy Meeks as the brains, the intelligence, and the humor behind what has made their lives in this Scream universe the most. So, Randy Meeks' story has ended in a far more glorious and ultimately, I feel, much better ending than what his character got. Because pretty much all the Scream fandom will tell you, even Wes Craven himself, R.I.P. dude, that Randy Meeks should never have died in Scream 2. He was smart, ahead of his time, and just probably the most calculating person that you would probably ever see in a horror franchise. And that's not too far-fetched to say, especially if you pay so much close attention to Screams 1 and 2, and what we know about him from Scream 3, and now the legacy that he leaves behind with Chad and Mindy. And Martha, sort of. But not really too much Martha. But the whole point was to show that even though he didn't affect too much, his calculating and plan meant that Dewey ultimately survived just a little bit longer, but I wasn't going to make it so far-fetched as to say that he would be able to save Dewey completely. Because even though Randy did pop in for evolving as a character, as a strategist, and just as a freaking immensely overbearing, smart, calculating human being, it just meant that there wasn't too much in the long run that he was going to change. But the outlook that it would have on the people, especially Sydney, Gale, and Randy's family, it would show that while he didn't affect too much with characters, he did affect with the minds of characters in every good way that you could imagine. And I feel this is the kind of ending that Randy Meeks should have had, sacrificing himself for the greater good and doing it for his family, maturing as a true finite Scream legacy character. With him being part of Dewey, Sydney, and Gale, even though Dewey sadly still would die, even though we still don't know if Scream 7's gonna bring him back, watch the Jill Roberts story, fan-made, not the actual thing, for more kind of idea of that, or at least my own take. We're not quite there on the whole Scream 7 thing yet. Point is, this was all to show just how amazing Randy Meeks' character was, and what he really could have done had he not been killed off. And what Wes Craven would tell you was one of the biggest mistakes of the Scream franchise. But I feel that this ultimately corrects the Randy Meeks character and puts a lot more, if not so much more, respect on his character's name. So, with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and stay tuned in the Omniverse of Nick for more.